So in this third part of our series of short videos detailing games design and development using MakeCode Arcade, I'm going to just refresh where we're at right now with our game that we have already created in MakeCode Arcade and look at what we're going to include in this particular video. So at the moment we have our games design, we have a number of sprites, we have a background, and we have the code that makes the sprites do things. So let's look at those one at a time. Our sprites are a duck and a car. Where they are is just on a plain blue background and what they're doing. So let's look at that step by step. The duck moves when the arrow keys are pressed. The duck moves on the up, down, left and right arrows. The car moves in straight lines from the right, so it comes in from the right of the screen and just moves across in a straight line to the left of the screen, and then it just runs off the screen. So that's just very basic movement for the duck and the car. If we look at the collision detection that we've implemented, so when the duck and the car collide, we do a little shake of the screen, we play a sound, and we make the car disintegrate. And then we've also introduced a projectile, so when the B button is pressed, the duck shoots a projectile in a straight line, and when the projectile hits the car, we destroy the car and destroy the projectile. So I'm just going to show you the code, just very briefly as a refresher, that has gotten us to here. And then once we have that done, I want to add in a few things. So the things I want to add in this time around are, I'd like to add in a number of lives, and I'd like to add in a count so that we can count how many projectiles had hit the target. We look at the lives first. Well, we're going to start the game with 5 lives. And then when the duck and the car collide, we reduce lives by 1. So that's just a simple subtract. And then the last thing we're going to do is we are going to just, so when lives equals 0, we're going to show game over. So that's just basically with our lives. So if we go and have a look at implementing that now. So we'll just go back to MakeCode Arcade. So again, just a quick reminder of where we're at with our game. So on start, we set the duck to sprite of kind player. We set the black background color to a light blue. We're moving the duck with buttons, and we're getting the duck to stay on screen. So that's our very basic duck movement. When the game updates every 2 seconds, we set a car sprite of kind enemy. We're setting the car position to the right hand side. So that's where the X is 160, and we're just picking a random value so it comes in at different points along the Y here. And then we're setting the car velocity to -100 on the X and 0 on the Y, and that just makes it move in straight lines from the right hand side of the screen. And then for the collision detection, we're saying when the player overlaps the enemy, so when they collide, we do the little camera shake, we play a sound, and we destroy the car. And then for the projectile, when the B button is pressed, we set a projectile. So we're creating our projectile here, and we're saying it has a velocity of 100, and it's going from the duck. So it has an X velocity of 100 and a Y velocity of 0. So that means it's going to shoot in straight lines from the left to the right. Now I'll put up a separate short video on position and velocity as well, so we can have a look at each of those values and what they mean. And then the last thing we have coded so far is that when the projectile overlaps the enemy, so when they collide, we're destroying the car and destroying the projectile. So the projectile just gets destroyed, whereas the car, we make it visible. Now we want to have a look at introducing lives. So if we go to info, now we have a variables number of blocks here that we can create if we want, but actually within Arcade it has a number of blocks already defined that we're going to use. So it has lives, and it also has a score. So we're going to use the lives for when the duck and the car collide, and every time that happens, the life is going to go down by 1, which we've just discussed in our design. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull across set life to 3 here, and we're putting it into the start block. So if we change that to 5, so now if I start my simulator here, It's just taking a little bit of time to do that. You'll see that there's 5 lives up the top here. Next, we want to change the lives. I'm just going to stop that for a second. So next we want to change the life by -1 every time the car and the duck overlap. So that's in this collision detection here. So as well as shaking, doing a little camera shake so it's visible that something is happening, playing a sound and destroying the car, we're also going to change life by -1. So I'm just going to put that in there. So now let's do some testing. So we have 5 lives. So there's 1 life gone and another one. So if I move the duck, there's a 3rd life gone. A 4th life gone. And you'll see one of the benefits of using the lives in info is that it deals with the game over scenario. Now, if you want to deal with that yourself, you can do on life 0, so that will override what is in there as a default. So you can say on life 0 and you can do different things, but this automatically deals with the game over scenario. So that's just basic lives. Again, you can create your own variable and you can have complete control over it, but I would suggest that you would use the lives that are here. The other one that we want to have a look at is changing the score when the projectiles hit their target. So I'm just going to go back to the design and decide what we're going to do there, and then we'll come back to Arcade and we'll implement what we have designed. Looking at the score we want to have on start. So at the start, we want the score to be set to 0. And then when the projectile hits the car, we want to change score by 1. So we want to add 1 to the score each time the projectile hits the car. So we can see, so we have 2 different variables going on. We have our lives and our score. So the lives go down every time the car hits it, the duck gets hit by a car, and then the score goes up by 1 when the projectile hits a car from the duck. Now what you could do, we're just going to do very basic scoring here, but what you could do is maybe, if you get a score of 10 or something, that you get an extra life. You could change the lives back up if you wanted. That's something that you could do as an extension activity yourself. So let's just have a look at how we might implement this in MakeCode. We're back in Arcade here, and again, remember, we want to set the score to 0 at the start. So let's just pull out that set score to 0. And I'm just going to put that in the start, just under set life to 5. And then when the projectile hits the car, then I'm just going to stop that for a second. So when the projectile hits the car, we can change score by 1. So when the projectile hits the car, we're destroying the car with the spray effect, we're destroying the projectile, and we're changing score by 1. So let's do a test again. So remember, it's the B button that shoots the projectile. Let's wait for a car to come along. So you can see the score going up in the right-hand side here. I've now hit 3 cars. I didn't hit that one, but you can see the score is here. The lives are on the left-hand side, the score. And again, you don't have to do anything to make that happen. So hopefully through the 3 short videos that I've uploaded, and again here, you'll see that when the game is over, you get a score. So it displays the score. If you're using the score variable from info here, it displays that score and it tells you you've got a new high score. So by using the blocks that are here, it just gives you some things really for free. So as I was saying there, just hopefully from the 3 short videos you will have seen the very basic games design. So we planned out what we were going to do and then we implemented it. You might also have seen that I did it in bits. So I did the basic, creating the characters, getting them to move first, tested that, made sure it was working correctly. Then the next thing we did was we included collision detection. So we had when the duck and the car collided, what were we going to do? And again, we planned that out before we did it. And then the next thing that we did was we implemented a projectile. And again, we planned that out. And once we had it planned out, then we came and we implemented it here in MakeCode Arcade. And then the final thing that we did in this video was that we included lives and we included scores. Now, again, as I said, you could implement those as variables yourself, but then if you're going to do that, then you're going to have to implement the game over scenario yourself. So it's really a matter of what I would suggest you do. Maybe if you're starting with Arcade, maybe use the predefined blocks. So use the info blocks and have a look at those. And then as you get a bit more confident with it, that maybe you could start to implement those kinds of things yourself. And think about what other things you might want to implement when the game is over. Now, there's a number of blocks here, and there's lots of things that we haven't looked at. Have a little look at those, and I'll put up some more videos over the coming weeks and months on Arcade. So there's loads on sprites. There's one on the controller. So you can just use left and right buttons and up and down buttons if you want. You don't have to use all four. So again, that's something you can look at. You can have a couple of players as well. So maybe that's something else that we can have a look at in future videos. But I hope you found this series of short videos interesting. What I will do next is I'm going to have a look in a separate video about position and velocity. So the position of a character on the screen, the X and Y values, but also the velocity. So let me know how you're getting on with these.